I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer at Gold Derby, joined today by Hamish Linklater, who stars as Father Paul Hill on Netflix's 7-part miniseries Midnight Mass. Hamish, you've been on countless TV sets in your career. So what is it like being on a Mike Flanagan set, and how does it differ from other sets you've been on in the past?
Uh, Mike has everything planned out. I mean, and it's actually for an actor like me a great relief, not to worry about anything. Maybe some actors like to worry. I can't imagine who those actors are, but it's like the most wonderful set possible, and he has all his shots planned. He has his company of actors who know how to work with him and who he trusts. And so, yeah, you sort of get enveloped in this fabulous way into his storytelling process.
And I know that because you were shooting in the pandemic, actually very early on in the pandemic, that you had a very special, or were working under very special circumstances where you were very isolated. And how did that experience foster your creative experience on the show, and how did it help you get into character?
Well, what was fantastic is we're shooting a show that's set on this sort of isolated island, and we were on a kind of isolated island. We were one of the first shows back up after uh, after the world shut down, and so it was kind of, for the sake of the show, a really useful situation, because we weren't talking to anybody else. We weren't talking to anyone with their masks off except for our cast. We had like this little tent on the set where the actors would be corralled, and because we're sharing breath and with one another anyway during the scenes, so we were in our own little bubble, and Crockett Island was its own little bubble. So it's kind of actually perfect bonding boot camp.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And I read that when you auditioned with around 14 pages of text, much of which was actually monologue, and that you had very little preparation time. And Father Paul / Monsignor Pruitt is an incredibly multi-layered character. So how much did you feel like you knew the character going into that audition? And how do you even deliver pages of dense monologue without having walked around in his shoes yet?
I think all that material, the character, his soul, his journey was all really already deeply considered by Mike. And so it was all on the pages. I mean, to be technical, there were 9 pages of monologues, and then they gave me like 5 more the night before, the day before. And it went in and made me really hope that it would work out. That they would pick me for the part, because I was like, oh, this is really. I mean, sometimes you work on sides or an audition, and you're like, oh, well, there's so much would be so great about this, but boy, this is going to be heavy lifting. Should God forbid someone hire me, this is the opposite case. This is like, oh my God, this would be like flying. So I was really happy.
That's great. And to get into character, I know that you actually worked with a technical advisor. What did this technical preparation entail? And are you someone who finds the way into a character with the help of technical aspects?
Yeah, we had I went and hung out with the priest, and he was there. I mean, the rituals are so complicated and intricate, and Mike was a altar boy, so he was sort of a technical advisor as well as editor, writer, director, producer at the same time. As an actor, yeah, I like all of that stuff, as much stuff as I can retain, but I really also, and yeah, you want to steep yourself in as much of it so that you can just let it go on the day and be in the room and be as light as you can be.
Absolutely. And aside from the technical preparation, did you do a deep dive into priesthood or just Christianity in general en route to playing Father Paul? Or what is some of the other preparation you did to get into character and to understand the means by which he attempts to reach his desired destination?
I watched Romero again and caught a little Raul Julia fever.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely love a costume, and putting on the costume was just, it brings its own thing. Being on that stage, call it a stage, I know it's not really a stage, but having that altar and having that congregation, that audience, and those words, but we had it was also like the circumstances of the shooting of the show, where what we did was, we were all together in Vancouver getting ready to shoot. We did a table read of all 7 episodes, all met each other, basically performed the show, and the next day Canada shut the borders. And I had just flown home to help stockpile toilet paper at my own house. And then so I was home, and then they were like, oh yeah, you're not going to be coming back for who knows how long. And then so then we had this about 4 or 5 month period where the episodes got to, and the characters and sort of marinate and sit in us, and a lot, it was my mom died during that time. I had another baby. We had another baby like 2 days later. After that, there was like a lot of life and death, which then and then we got in a car and drove through California fires, across the border back to Vancouver to actually play these parts. And I think everyone's experiences really informed what we were doing. I know it certainly did for me. It was a great gift to get to talk about resurrection and life and death as much as I got to in the subsequent 3 months of shooting.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And of course, as we have already mentioned, you have a lot of monologues on this show, but noticeably of varying nature. And I would like to start with sermons, which are a specific type of monologue because they're essentially an argument and they have a very specific rhythm to them. So how did you approach and prepare for some of Father Paul's very lengthy sermons?
Yeah, they're like essays, with oxygen, hopefully an essay on its feet, and they're good arguments, and that was what I would just like try to set myself as a task, is to discover the arguments, discover the supporting evidence in scripture for the arguments as it's going along, and in a way that's going to appeal to the hearts and minds of the congregation. But it's I think just having faith that what is on the page is going to be good for the audience of the congregation, maybe even potentially the audience of bingers, is essential. And so that's what I have. But you sort of breathe and you look at people and just tell them this good news, I think.
And was it ever difficult for you to switch in and out of these different rhythms that your scenes called for on this show?
Yeah, I mean, they're beautiful. I think the 5 sort of sermons that he does, there's a terrific arc to and different music to each one of the pieces, and they're reflective of where he is in his own discovery of what his mission is going to be there, what he's been sent to do. So to a degree, he's having the conversation with himself and conveying where he is on his journey, even though he doesn't really know it. And I mean, I sort of I was certainly doing that myself.
And then you have someone like Samantha Sloyan, who plays Bev, and whose line delivery, again, requires a very specific, almost biblical rhythm. So how was it playing off of her?
Challenging. I mean, she's just so obviously so wicked, and yeah, just no, she's heavenly. She's got a big theater background herself. It was just I think the frisson of romantic perhaps between Bev and Father Paul, you know, that language which dare not speak its name. I think that was a nice discovery that we had going along.
Yeah, and you also get some really great scenes with Zach Gilford, whose character Riley attends A meetings with Father Paul. How was it navigating these quieter, more intimate two-handers, and what sides of Father Paul do we get to see in them?
Well, you know, Zach and I are really good friends. We live like a few blocks from each other. He went to Northwestern with Lily, and they were scene partners together there. And I was so excited when I found out that we were going to do it together and do these scenes. But there's what's lovely is, you know, Riley was my altar boy, and so there's just like this deep caring between the characters. I mean, he doesn't know, but trying to help someone with the weight that they carry. That's all that I mean. That episode 5, it's just trying to lift that weight, the guilt, and again, talking to myself. That's it's a big dialogue with self and with somebody else outside who you care about so much.
Yeah,
but it is like, but I mean, those scenes, that is like, it's a proper Shaw play. I mean, it is a long, serious, in-depth essay in dialogue about faith and addiction and personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And there's one line in the second episode in the first AE meeting that really stuck out to me, which is, or it's 2 lines combined rather, which is where Father Paul says, suffering can be a gift. It just depends on what you do with it. And I just found this very fascinating and was just curious what this reveals about Father Paul's outlook on life and what it maybe says about his journey throughout this entire show.
Well, he certainly lived a lot of life at that point, and yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean, I think it's probably the only way to deal with trauma, if you are able to deal with it, is to find the utility in trauma and decide whether you're able to transition it into something that's good for the world and for you, or if you're not able yet.
Absolutely. And now we're going into extreme spoiler territory, because we because we reach the climax at the end of episode 6, where Father Paul officially reveals that he is Monsignor Pruitt, and he discloses his mission with the island's residents. And then he gets shot in the head by Mildred, the love of his life. In what way is this moment a moment of realization for him?
I thought you were going to say, in what way? Have you ever had has that ever happened to you?
Hmm.
I think so. I mean, I think, yeah, it has to be just like a snap on, sort of snap off. I don't know. I also feel like he's figuring out that things are out of control as things are going out of control. The exchange between the sheriff and his son, I find absolutely so staggering and heartbreaking, and that Father Paul is still pushing through during that, and encouraging this boy to reject his father and reject his father's faith and come over to another faith. I think it's like really, he deserves a bullet to the brain at that point. Some sort of rejiggering of his senses.
Oh yeah. And then we get to the finale, where we get this scene, again, a very intimate scene between Father Paul and Mildred, where he explains that he brought the angel slash creature slash whatever we want to call it back to the island for his love of Mildred and Sarah. How was it holding in all of this for much of the shoot? And then, of course, I don't know what the timeline of your shoot looked like, but how did it feel to eventually pour all of this out, to pour out this vulnerability, this sorrow, this pain?
Well, I don't think he's realized that that's what he was doing until she kills him, and until he sees how out of control everything is. I mean, yeah. I think he really believes it's for the benefit of everybody. Yeah. And then, but then says no. I am human. This was probably my subconscious motivation all the way through.
Yeah, and on a final note, I asked your co-star Kate Siegel the same question earlier, or a similar question earlier. Looking back, how was it navigating material like this that reflects on life, death, purpose, grief, you name it, in the early stages of the pandemic, which is when you shot this show, as you already mentioned before? What did you take home from working on this particular story at that particular time?
Well, what were the lines that you said from the second episode of the AA?
From the second episode, suffering can be a gift. It just depends on what we do with it.
It was like such a wild gift.
Absolutely.
To get the show at that time.
Absolutely, and it was such a gift for us to watch it. And to our viewers, if you haven't already, make sure to catch up on Midnight Mass on Netflix. Hamish, thank you so much for your time today. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you.